actually up to start round 2 also.
So this pick, I have to be honest with you. I made the pick. I didn't love it. I wasn't 100% sure I wanted to go with this guy. There's other guys I like personally better, but the value here is what made me lean towards this pick. I took Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers. Just for the value. I know so many people like him, and he's a guy where if I had the opportunity to take him, I might be looking to move him to someone who is a Texas fan or just is in love with him. I think he has a chance to really flourish this year and get the. He just was okay last year. He just was okay. But I think everyone has talked about him for so much. I think the hype is still out there. I think the hype is real. I took him here for value, even though I have to be honest, the 3 guys that went after him, all 3 of those guys, I was probably thinking about taking here instead. But then I looked at it and I said, if it isn't me personally, if I'm looking at value pick, I'm taking Ewers at the second round.
Well, Ewers was really, really good to start the season last year and then got hurt. He hurt his shoulder and was just never the same whenever he came back. But he was lighting Alabama up early on in that game until he got hurt.
Well, and that's why I say value pick here, I think, at the second round. Because, I mean, I think if you look last year, this guy's top 5 in most picks last year preseason. So that's what I'm saying. At this point, I'm not totally sold, but I also am aware that the value is there at 2-1 compared to where he was going, any one thing from 1-1 to 1-5 in a lot of Devy's last year. At this point, I think you got to jump on him because the upside is there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if he blows up and just, absolutely comes out and is who everyone said they thought he could be since high school, you're looking at, a legit first round NFL draft pick. So that's why you have to take, I think especially with QB, you're talking about either super flex or 2 QB, you got to take the QB value.
Definitely. And if you watch the Texas spring game at all, he was dropping dimes out there. He looked great.
And he's someone that I think you can kind of compared to Will Levis as far as that draft capital, where he might be talked about like a first round quarterback, but then he doesn't make it to the first round, but then someone trades up in that second to get him, so he becomes a hot commodity come draft season next year as well. Just because he starts, there's the quarterback battle happening there. But I think Ewers goes out there, he's getting another weapon in the Donnie Mitchell out there, still has Jatavion Sanders, so I think Xavier Ward, he still has weapons there, and as long as he's healthy, I think we can see a great season. As we all said before, QB3 still up for grabs, and it could very well be Ewers there.
Yep, most definitely. Pick 202 is SC here. Let's go and move along with you there, bud.
Yeah, man, the running back position, wide receivers are so deep, and I treat this Devy Mock as, we're actually drafting. We have a three-team league going on, right? So I went with Braylon Allen. I just think right now he's the RB3 of that 2024 class. Just a beast out of Wisconsin. I love his running style, and I think he's just definitely going to be someone that's a possible maybe late day 1 if he has a phenomenal season, but definitely maybe a day 2, round 2, round 3 NFL draft pick. And I think you have a lot of talent there. And in the college league itself, he's going to go out there and dominate. So he's definitely someone you want on your rosters. And to have him come in, next year for you, that'll be awesome for your team.
Yeah, and they're also kind of switching up their offense over at Wisconsin. Luke Fickell took that job, and he's going to bring a little bit more of a passing mentality, which is going to take a lot of the pressure off Braylon Allen. He won't be expected to just carry the entire load. He's able to do that. I mean, he's very Derrick Henry-esque, just very solidly built, runs similar style, kind of that upright. I'm going, and then I'm going to dip my shoulder and run you over. I can stiff arm the hell out of you, and then just keep going. He has plenty of speed in order to be able to run away, and he is a bruiser. I'd like to see what he can do in the passing game also. Of course, as you've seen with Derrick Henry, that doesn't really hinder him very much either. So,
yeah.
All right. right. See, 2-3 looks like it's mine. I took Luther Burden, wide receiver out of Missouri. This guy's Deebo Samuel. I mean, if you just look at him and watch the way he plays, he's exactly what Deebo Samuel is. Same size, same build, same attributes, same style. He is Deebo Samuel, and if you can get Deebo Samuel early in the first part of the second round of a Devy draft, you would definitely have done that. So taking Luther Burden here was very much a steal in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. This is the guy I thought about taking over Ewers. And then if he was going to get back to me, Burden was going to be my first guy I was taking back. So you stole him from me a little bit. You can see all my Missouri stuff behind me. I mean, he's with Dominic Levitt leaving to go to Georgia, I mean, he might be one of the most talented, if not the most talented wide receiver to ever go to Missouri. I think the Deebo Samuels comparison is spot on. I don't think he's just a pure receiver as far as the receiving talent goes. I just think he's a football player who makes plays. And that's why I like what you said with Deebo. I think he's a guy you can get the ball in his hands a bunch of different ways, and he just is going to use his talent. But I love him everywhere. And I think with better QB play this year, I think you're going to see his stats, which were pretty good for a true freshman, to be honest with you. A true freshman in the SEC were pretty solid with not very good quarterback play. Depending on who wins that job in Missouri this year, I think you can see Luther Burden's stats going way up this year.
Well, the guy's built like a running back, so he has that thick lower half and just able to just barrel through corners. We had mentioned Braylon Allen earlier, kind of comped him to Derrick Henry. I could easily see Luther Burden doing the same type of stiff arm to a corner out there on the edge, catching the screen and just going.
Yeah, he's a monster.
Yep. Let's see. 2-4 was also mine. I went with the first freshman running back here. Went Cedric Baxter Jr., running back out of Texas. Like I said, don't lose faith in Jaden Blue, but Cedric Baxter, in my opinion, is the best running back in this class. Him and Justice Haynes, and then I don't think it's really. I think those are the top two, and I don't think it's even close. Moving on from those guys, they're 1 and 2, and then it's everybody else after them.
Yeah, Tommy, I was going to say, if you're in a supplemental this year. Like you said, we've already had all your draft last year, or you're a couple years in to your C2C league. I got this guy number 1. He's my number 1 available running back. All those other guys are most likely off the board. If that's the case, I've got him at the top of my list. He's probably my number 1 guy I want in a supplemental draft. Now, the question is, where are you drafting? If you're at the end of the first round, I don't think there's any way he gets to you. If he does, you just scored gold. But I'm with you. I think Baxter is the guy in this class. I love what he could do with Texas. I just think that offense is on the way up, no matter who's. They just got so many guys. Baxter's probably my number 1 target if I'm looking at a running back, and I'm not in a startup. That if I'm in a startup and I got Singleton and I've got Sanders and all those guys available, I'm going those guys first. Baxter's slightly behind him, but if all those guys are gone, Baxter's my guy.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, if you can hit him Baxter in your draft, you're only going to gain in value. Whereas if you miss on him, it's going to cost you a pretty penny, to get him. It's almost what the King's ransom was for Bijan. I'm not going to compare him to Bijan, but as far as the value he was at the 101, this is what Baxter's going to be. If this is just his freshman season, he's only going to get better as he accumulates to the college system, as he goes into that Big 12 and continues to just shine. I mean, just a great, phenomenal back. And, he's definitely the 101. And, you're going to struggle if it's like, okay, Cape Klubnik, who I'm taking next, or not Cape Klubnik, I mean, Malachi Nelson or Nico Adamavila, or Cedric Baxter. If they're all there for you to say a 1-2 for whatever reason, it's like, all right, where am I going to go? Even though it's a super flex league, there's a lot of talent for Baxter going there.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys look back a year ago, and you look at Nicholas Singleton, people were going crazy over him. I just see that Cedric Baxter is going to have that type of hype to him. And by the end of his career, I could easily see him as getting that same type of Nicholas Singleton love moving into the draft.
Agreed.
All right, SC, you had mentioned your next pick here. Why don't you go ahead and expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, Kate Klubnik from Clemson. I mean, you took Drew Allard earlier. I think this is the QB2 in that 2025 class. Just someone, as I mentioned in our quarterback show that we did, he's very fluid, man. I just love his movement. He's very elegant in the way he moves and the way he throws his ball. It's just kind of just like a Van Gogh type of painting, just how he throws it and how he's moving in the backfield. And that's something I really like in those quarterbacks. He kind of like nothing really phases him. If he throws an interception, he forgets about it the next play. Just smart quarterback. And I think if you're getting him at 205 in the Superflex league, that's a huge steal for you in your C2C or your Devy leagues, because he's someone that I think he's going to continue to shine, and he's going to be one of the top quarterbacks taking off in 2025.
Yeah, he for me. If I can't get Alar's my first guy I'm looking for. If I can't get him, I'm doing what I can to get Klubnik. I agree with SC. He's my number 2 guy. You're gonna get CFF and C2C value out of him for the next couple of years, and then I think he's got a huge upside at QB. And the good thing is for him, we've seen some of these smaller QBs get drafted of recently, and he's not tiny by any means, but he's only about 6'1", 6'2". I think they got him listed at 195. He can probably beef up a little bit eventually. But again, him not having to be 6'5", 240, I think helps out that he's seeing some of these other guys go higher in the draft. So that gives me a little bit more hope that his Devy side is a little bit higher. But as he said, I think he's a smooth quarterback. I think him getting the full offseason and going in as the man this year for Clemson is going to be a huge difference for him.
Well, and then them also bringing in their new offensive coordinator is just going to really feature him in that passing game. And also he has wheels. The guy can move. He can outrun defenders. He can get to the outside. He's tough. And Garrett Riley, his new offensive coordinator, is just going to put him in the best possible position to make plays.
Great.
All right. So next looks like JT has back-to-back picks here.
Yeah, here's where I wanted Luther Burden if you got to me, and you snaked him from me. It was a great pick by you. So I jumped into the very next 2 guys, same class as him that I think are right up there with him. And Evan Stewart, wide receiver, Texas A&M, and then right after him at 2-7, I took Malik Neighbors, wide receiver, LSU. I think those guys, Burden, I think, is the more all-around guy. I think Stewart has a shot to be maybe the more pure wide receiver. And I like Neighbors. I just think he's got a huge ceiling. QB play, kind of like with, like you said, with Burden, is like, how's that going to work out for his CFF stats or his C2C? Those are a little more iffy for me, but I mean, man, he put up pretty good numbers with not the best quarterback play. And you figure out LSU, they're going to figure out QB pretty quick, with their head coach of Brian Kelly and everything. You figure they're going to make that work this year. So those were the next 2 guys. Burden was my guy. I was eyeing there, but with no Burden, Evan Stewart, I felt like is the guy, the next pick there. And then right after him, I'm real high on Malik Neighbors. And I just feel like people were kind of on Stewart last year. I think a lot of people weren't on Neighbors yet. And now's the time to buy Neighbors before he just goes, before he goes to the roof as far as value. Right now it's a steal for him. I think that mid to late second round's a good spot to pick him up.
Oh, most definitely. I think I've got Evan Stewart as my wide receiver 2 in that 2025 class, just right behind Luther Burden. So that was definitely a very solid pick. Malik Neighbors is, like you said, there wasn't a lot of people that were just extremely high on him going into last season, and then he just blew up. It was supposed to be Keyshawn Boutte, and he really struggled out of the gate. So they looked towards Neighbors, and he did not disappoint.
Yeah, I mean, you think about Neighbors out in LSU. I mean, before this Ohio State started trending towards wide receiver U, it was LSU, right? You had Jefferson, you had Chase. Neighbors could definitely be a great talent coming there. And again, what we talked about with the guy for Ole Miss earlier today, that if he goes out there, Franklin, and does great, any wide receiver that goes out there and dominates an SEC versus a dominant defense, I mean, you could raise them on your draft boards all day, and that just helps it in general. The other receivers can ball in other conferences, but if you're balling in the SEC, that's going to raise your draft stock across the board, because they're like, oh, this is the defensive city, right? This is a defensive conference, and these guys are still putting up numbers. That's something to look at. I mean, Evan Stewart, he's also an SEC. I keep forgetting A&M's there as well. So I mean, both those guys can go out there and dominate, and if you can grab them, they're definitely gonna be hot for you going into the pro leagues.
Most definitely. Actually, SC, you are up next, buddy.
Yeah, 208. Quinson and Nick Singleton definitely your RB1, RB2 was looking like, but I'm not losing hope on Branson Robinson. We might honestly just get one good season out of him at Georgia, but that's gonna be enough. I mean, coming out of high school, this kid was like squatting like over 720 or 750, something like that in high school. This is just a built beast. They talk about Quadzilla, AJ Dillon. This guy's quads are massive. I mean, he's just someone that's just a huge power runner. He's a bruiser. He's been come to Nick Chubb. His high school tape is more like a Leonard Fournette, when he was going in there. And if he's bringing that kind of combo, Leonard Fournette, Nick Chubb, I'm all in on him. And I just think Georgia produces running backs, and if you can get the next Nick Chubb, why not make it with Branson Robinson? Again, we might just see one good season of him at Georgia just because they have running backs. It's cycling them, but it's not going to be one that you're going to want to miss out on. So if you can grab him, I'm definitely all over him.
Yeah, Branson Robinson looks like a grown man since he was like 12 years old. So, that's pretty incredible, actually. The thing with Georgia running backs is like you said, they kind of cycle them. So they're more running back by committee. That doesn't make Branson Robinson not Devy viable. He is a big time Devy prospect, just because the NFL is going to fall in love with this guy, especially whenever he actually does start getting doesn't have to have a lot of carries, just even a few. And this guy's going to blow up, especially whenever it comes to combine season here in a couple of years.
Right.
I'm super excited about Robinson. I think he could be an absolute stud. I'm excited to see him on the field. I know they were super deep at running back. He didn't get many chances last year, but man, if he shows anything, I feel like this guy's a Devy stud. Like I said, I think, like you guys said, I think the NFL is going to love him no matter what he does in college, as far as like stat wise is concerned. CFF, they've been known to run the ball. Will they throw the ball a little bit more with some of the quarterbacks they've had and wideouts they got the last couple of years? Possibly, but Devy wise, Robinson, man, I think you're right, SC. If you don't get him now, I think there's no way you're getting him again. I think everybody, if he even plays remotely decent this year, he is going to fly up the charts.
Right now in that class, I mean, everyone's going towards Quinson and Singleton because we saw them freshman year, right? So he's kind of falling down some boards because, like, oh, maybe he's not what we thought. He didn't get the playing time. Don't sleep on him. I think he's going to be great.
I could easily see him passing those guys. If he plays solid, I could see him jumping up to number one pretty easily.
Right.
It's very possible. Let's see. Okay, I guess I'm up next here. I've got back-to-back picks here. 2-9. I went. I'm actually. It looks like I'm taking a lot of the first freshmen here. Brandon Enos, wide receiver out of Ohio State. I know he has not enrolled at Ohio State yet, so he didn't go through spring. Everybody fell in love with Carnell Tate during spring practice and their spring game, but Brandon Enos is as consistent as they get. I have him as my number one wide receiver in the 2026 class. He's got that kind of Ohio State size, is that typical Ohio State mold of a wide receiver. Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, JSN, 6'1", 6'2", has a good frame, runs precise, crisp routes. Obviously, nobody else is Marvin Harrison Jr. That guy is just a freak at 6'4", and the way he's able to run and the routes he's able to run. But Enos is going to be as close to a Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave as you're going to end up finding.
Agreed. It's funny. I'm gonna start calling you like the wide receiver sniper because he was talking about that he wanted Luther Burden. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take Robinson because Ennis will make it back to me on my next pick. And the next pick, he took him. And I was like, that was a great pick. I love that pick.
Yeah, just my little 2 cents on Enid. I like him a ton. Again, they're loaded at wide receiver. They are every year. Something about this guy. He just seems like a dog. He just seems like a guy that's just going to go out, get physical. He doesn't seem like a prima donna. He seems like a dude just wants to work and be just tough as nails. Man, I don't know. There's going to be a lot of guys. It's going to be hard to fit your way in there. But like you said, they've just been bringing in studs. And my biggest question for me with him is where do I get him? Like, how long do I wait to see if he gets to me? Or do I like jump up to try to make sure I don't lose out on him? So it's definitely going into the summer trying to figure out where I'm taking guys. He's one of those guys that I'm looking at. It's like, can I wait to mid-second? Can I wait till early third? Or do I got to jump on early and make sure I get him?
He's someone that we might not even see him year one, right? I mean, you just look at Ohio State. We might not even know it, but if you're already on top of him and you know what he's about, I mean, it's gonna be worth. It's one of those take it because the value is gonna be there when he starts getting some playing time. So that's what I love about some of these players is you get them before they're hot, and then guess what? If they're hot and you need some value, get that back and some. And I think Ennis is just gonna do that, And also he's coming from American Heritage, a top high school that has great competition, goes against great competition. So he's not gonna be faded by the going to Ohio State and being like, oh, the competition level is different. No, he already knows what competition is like. He's played in some big games, and it's gonna go in there and not phase him once he gets his shot.
Well, there's been a couple of Ohio State wide receivers that have kind of been pushed to the side and even have started transferring out. I mean, you look at Caleb Burton; he transferred out. You have guys like Jalen Ballard and Kyon Graves that have kind of lost their luster a little bit. Kyon Graves was a big time prospect coming in last year, and he was a big time Devy prospect. People loved him and never saw the field, and I don't know if he ever will it. They're in Columbus.
Yeah, I mean, I could see Ennis literally completely redshirting this year and not be seeing any time at all with how loaded they are at wide receiver. But he's a guy, like you said, I would be willing to wait on him, that he has huge upside and could eventually be that guy. I like him a lot. I'm probably going to try not to reach on him, but yeah, I'm willing to take him, even if that means, waiting a year or two to see any kind of production from him.
Yep.
Oh yeah. My next pick here with 210. I went with Donovan Edwards, running back out of Michigan. I think he is supremely talented. I think he is more NFL ready than what his teammate Blake Corum is. Even though Corum is a great runner, I don't necessarily see him as a great NFL back. I see Donovan Edwards as a potential great NFL running back.
I was a little disappointed to see Corum not leave and come back as far as if you're in on Donovan Edwards, because I wanted to see Donovan Edwards get the backfield to himself this year to see what he could do. Like you said, I'm not hating on Blake Corum. He's a really good college running back. I don't see him making it at the next level. I just don't. He's too small. And that Michigan O-line was just dominant last year. So I wanted to see what Donovan Edwards has. You're gonna see him this year, but how much you're gonna see him with Corum is a little bit of an iffy. But yeah, I really want to see Edwards have the stage to himself at Michigan this year is what I was really, really hoping more. That's the only reason he's dropped a little bit in my Devy rankings, is only because I think he's going to share that time, especially CFF, C2C side. I'm like, he's probably not going to give me that much. So he's going to drop on that side for me, just because I'm like, I want a guy that's going to give me a little more production on the college side. But like you said, elite receiving skills. I can see him end up being that guy that we talk about with very marginal college numbers that ends up being an absolute stud in the pros because he just never got the full load in college, and he goes to pros and he does everything the pros like.
Well, you saw what he did towards the end of the season whenever Corum was hurt. He lit everybody up. I mean, he was tearing the field up. Looked like the best player out there. So I kind of look at Edwards in the same vein. I look at Trevion Henderson. Is they don't have to carry the load. Henderson has 2-3 other guys that Ohio State's is going to depend on along with him, and with Edwards having Corum, they're going to have a lot of tread left on the tire whenever they get to the NFL. So they're not going to be all beat up and have nothing left.
And I like Corum. And the funny thing is, I would take Donovan Edwards over Corum in a Devy draft, but in a straight college draft or C2C, I'm probably taking Corum over him.
Right.
I think Corum's just that better college running back. They're both great, but I think Corum has more upside in college, where though Donovan Edwards, though, he's going to be the better pro prospect. So that'll be the difference there for me when I'm drafting these guys. And both could be great. We can have a great 1-2 punch. We see that a lot in college, but when it comes to the pro side or your Devy ones, I'm definitely going Edwards over Corum.
Yeah, I agree with that. See on that the exact take.
Yep. All right, SC, you're up, buddy. Let's go with 211 here.
Yeah, I'm going with I believe this is the quarterback 2 in the freshman class, Dante Moore at UCLA. Just a phenomenal talent, someone that climbed my ranks as far as the freshman coming in over the past couple of months. He just could go in there kind of. I think he's going to end up taking the spot, but we'll see. He might rest or it might be a quarterback battle going in. But really just kind of pick up where Dorian Thompson-Robinson left off and just be an all-around great quarterback for that team specifically. He can run around. He can escape the pocket when he needs to, but he can make the throws. I don't know yet if he's really that quarterback that we're going to see heavy in the pros, but I really do like him for your college leagues, and he's definitely a great prospect to have in your Devy drafts, especially in Superflex, because, coming in as a freshman with the talent he has, the sky's the limit. So I really like him here, and I think he's the quarterback 2 in this class behind Malachi.
I agree with that, and actually I heard something with the other day with Chip Kelly talking about how much he loves Dante Moore's presence. Even if he doesn't start right away, because they did bring in Colin Schlee out of Kent State, so I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of a competition there. But if Moore doesn't end up taking that job immediately, that's not really an indictment on him. Colin Schlee is a very good college quarterback in his own right. But Dante Moore, 6'2", 210. He's got pretty decent size to him, and if they're already talking about he's a professional quarterback. He just has that type of aura, that type of presence. I think he's going to do big things for the Bruins.
The reason why I wouldn't take him is simply because I'm in Oregon, and he did commit to Oregon at first, but then Bo Nix, for whatever reason, said, I'm coming back. And then Moore's like, all right, I'm going to UCLA. So I might hold that grudge against him. But, I mean, if you can grab him, he's definitely great to have there.
That would have been a pretty loaded quarterback room with Bo Nix and Ty Thompson and Austin Novosad and then Dante Moore also. That'd been crazy.
I can pull up text messages of me talking to one of my buddies saying Dante Moore just committed to Oregon, and then a few weeks later, all right, he's back at UCLA. He's not going to Oregon. There's sad faces everywhere.
Well, I think what you brought up was a good point. I mean, these are freshmen. I think we're excited these guys to hit right away, especially at QB. But man, that's a big change from high school. I don't care if you're on one of the best high schools in America. It's a big change from high school to college. And just because these guys sit, I don't think that, like you said, it's not an indictment on them or their talent at all. I think sometimes it just takes a little bit of time to figure it out. And I think college coaches, unlike the NFL, where the NFL is going to play the draft pick, the high capital guy, they're doing that. In college, they want the experienced guy. Most college coaches are going to go experience over talent most of the time just because they're more comfortable with it. That's just the way college coaches think. And so if he comes in and doesn't start, to me, that does not scare me off one bit off him. I think he's the guy of the future there. But like you said, an older guy transferring in, I would not be surprised if he starts all year. We don't see more at all, or just a little bit of him this year, and then he takes over next year. But I think that's something to always think about is we expect these guys to hit right away in college, and it's a step up. I don't care where you're from.
Yeah, I mean, most of the big time quarterbacks were not day one starters. I mean, Peyton Manning was not a day one starter at Tennessee. It was Jerry Colquitt, and then it was Todd Helton. Then Todd, I don't know where I was. Tim Tebow. He had Chris Leak in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they're guys don't necessarily automatically come in and run day one, and but they still end up great. We have examples even this coming year. Malachi Nelson, he's going to sit. Nico Iamaleava going to sit. So don't let that run you off from some of these guys that have great potential to them. Bryce Young sat. He redshirted his freshman year, sat behind Mac Jones. Tua
exactly. And I think, like we talked about, sitting sometimes is better for these guys. Sometimes it's better not to throw them right in the fire and have them get beat up and lose a little confidence. Because, man, having that secure confidence in yourself is what makes these guys great. And so having that great confidence, having that year where you can learn from somebody older, maybe more mature, maybe not better than you. My guess, most of these guys still think they're better than that guy, which I love. They should think they're better. But getting that year to learn, kind of figure out the system, figure out what coaches want. What do they want out of you? What are they looking for? I don't think at the college level that's as big of a miss as when you go to the NFL and you're like, oh, this guy's sitting for a year or two in the NFL. Like, to me, that's more of an indictment on a guy than it is in college. You expect that little bit of that learning curve. And I think sometimes us as prognosticators or fantasy football players or just analysts, we get a little excited when we want to see these guys right away. And I think sometimes it actually is beneficial for them all around sometimes to sit that year, especially when you're at a stud program with a million other 5-4-star guys in front of you.
Agreed.
Yeah, most definitely. JT, that's actually going to bring you up to close out the round.
Yeah, so here for me. So I took this pick purely on potential. I don't, like we just talked about, I could see him not playing much at all this year, or I could see him being a stud just because of the talent there. I went Alabama running back Justice Haynes. I've been hearing great things about the spring game, what he's done in the spring with them, just kind of the elite athlete he's looking like. Now, there's a good chance. I mean, they trust Chase McClellan at running back. And I think there's a good chance he ends up being the number one for most of the year for Alabama. But can Justice Haynes work his way in there, show some magic, get people excited about him, and then him be the guy next year? I think so. I took this pick completely Devy side, even CFF, C2C side. If I have Justice Haynes, do I think I'm getting a lot out of him this year? I'm probably not expecting a lot. In Devy, I'm taking him because the upside is just there for him to be the next stud Alabama running back. So I'm higher on him in Devy. C2C, I still love him because, again, maybe he doesn't, end up winning the job this year outright, but you're going to get a couple more years out of him. Upside is just there. I know there's a million studs in that backfield. Mm-hmm. He's the guy I'm leaning towards at Alabama. If you're looking upside future, Justice Haynes is my guy.
Yeah, I mean, they're at Alabama. They kind of do the same thing that Georgia does and kind of rotates in different running backs. You're going to have Jace McClellan. You're going to have Jamarian Miller. You're going to have Justice Hayes. You may even have Roydell Williams come in a little bit there. Just like I said, Justice Haynes, but then there's also the other freshman, Richard Young, who has a lot of talent also. But Justice Haynes could end up just destroying guys here over the next couple of years.
with Haynes and Richard Young, I mean, both those guys you might not see, but I think both those guys are worth some looks at because they can definitely be a great thunder and lightning duo there. I mean, you have one that has speeds and one that just has some bruising power. And, I really like both of them as prospects. And like he was saying, Alabama is one of those colleges where I just want a piece of the running back room, because their running backs produce. So if you can grab them, when they're haven't stepped on the field yet, but hey, you're going to get some playing time down the road, I would take that because the high upside is definitely there for the colleges like Alabama that know how to produce those running backs and utilize them in college as well.
Yeah, and even if they end up transferring out somewhere else, they're still going to have great value. I mean, look at guys like Alvin Kamara. He was part of that backfield and then transferred out.
Right.
Kamar Wheaton, a couple years ago, he was a big time running back coming in out of high school. Transferred out, went to SMU now. So I mean, those guys are still going to have value. So if somebody like Justice Haynes or Richard Young doesn't like where they're at on the depth chart and they want to move on and be dominant somewhere else, they'll still have value.
Agreed.